I like the blue. It's good. The blue.
And if you want to pull up a chair or something to sit here for that, no
I was
problem.
just saying I like the blue.
Oh.
All right. Well, it's 5:30 if you're ready to go.
Let's go.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
I will count you in. So 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to another episode of After Hours Live from us, the founders of Open Lake Collective.
Yes, we're back.
We are a brand marketing, consumer insights marketing, and CX agency. And I actually messed that up.
It's a lot of words for a month.
It's a lot of words.
Yeah.
And I'm Jess, Cervellon, digital marketing and CX expert, joined by.
And I am Laura Menna. I'm not about expert, that's ambitious to say about myself, but consumer insights, brand strategist, snack lover, CPG queen.
CPG queen, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
So this week is sponsored, before we get into anything, by Recharge. Shout out to Recharge. Thank you for making our dreams come true.
Yeah, thanks, Recharge.
And this week, we're breaking down a supplement brand called Arrae.
Arrae. Here we have some, just so the folks at home can see the product itself. We are avid users of the product, excited to talk about the brand and what they're building and why it's differentiated in the super saturated supplement space.
Yeah, definitely. And
See, I broke into it today.
Yeah.
I had an
necessary.
upset tummy.
Yep.
But it really worked. And
Yeah.
we'll get into the messaging and like why it works and what we really like about it. But let's kick it off. Laura, tell us about those consumer insights,
Let's
baby.
do it. Okay, so we're gonna go on a journey here.
Okay, man.
So we're gonna go on the history of supplements.
Ooh.
I'd like to go deep here. Like, when did we all start supplementing? It kind of feels like we woke up one day and everybody has a 12-step supplement routine. But really, the supplement market started in the 1800s. So a lot of consumers started supplementing to help prevent different diseases that are no longer really around, like rickets and scurvy. And that was really when the world started leaning towards supplementation. And then as you move into the early 1900s with world wars and soldiers needing to stay strong is when the multivitamin really emerged. So that was like the first supplement offering. Obviously, still today, I'd say multivitamins are something that's pretty core to people's supplement routines, just being able to take one thing that covers a multitude of different purposes. But that's really how supplementation started in this country. And then as we move on throughout the rest of the 1900s, starts to become more regulated. And then really COVID is what shifted behavior around supplementation in a major way. So obviously during the pandemic, everyone's really scared. How can I make sure that I maintain like strong levels of immunity and I don't get COVID and so forth. So that led to a really dramatic increase in supplementation. So according to Mintel, 75% of Americans take at least one supplement per day, but a third of supplement users actually increased their intake since the pandemic, and specifically millennials. So about half of them are using supplements more frequently now than they did pre-COVID. So COVID is really, I think, COVID in tandem with just the rise in natural and wellness and health and people being a little bit more focused really led to this perfect storm for all of these supplement brands to take off.
Yeah. Okay, wait. I want to go back to the history part. Because
Yeah.
actually, when you were talking, I was like, dang, witchy. It felt
Yeah.
witchy, like woo-woo.
Yeah.
Salem.
She loves a woo-woo moment, folks.
But I think we like don't think about that.
Yeah.
Like I think that the supplement space, like absolutely. There's a ton of supplements out there. I mean, everywhere, like not even just supplements, right? It's like health and wellness.
Yeah.
We're also really obsessed with like health and wellness. And I thought that was really interesting how you like went into the history of it, because like even before then, before we started getting into this modern medicine, right?
Yeah.
You would go to the apothecaries and you would say like, okay, like what's this tincture, right? And that was actually like really normal, right? Like doctors utilize tinctures, not just like medications that were made in a factory somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess we're kind of getting back to the roots. And I think it's even more interesting too, because I think when we think about the broader industry of just consumer packaged goods, I think we all sometimes forget how new this industry really is in like the scale of the universe and the world. And as long as we've been around, just like industrialization and, creating food within a factory and on a manufacturing line when people used to just make food at home or on a farm. And the same thing with supplementation, just like mass production of these things is pretty new. So I think paying close attention to the trends and what's driving them is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the last point too, what's interesting about like this drive to supplementation and that health and wellness too, I've actually have noticed that like Chinese medicine has made a comeback. Like, I mean,
totally.
It's always been there, right? But with acupuncturists utilize a lot of like Chinese herbs and Chinese medicine, and like herbalism has really made a resurgence. Like I really want to get my herbalism certification. Story for another day. We won't go there. But my point is though, is like, even in just like a social influencing perspective, right? Like, yes, like the COVID impact, absolutely. I think like the pandemic has really made us want to take care of ourselves internally and like, not just utilize, you know, the drugs that your doctor is giving you. But I just think it's so interesting. So I just wanted to nerd out about that for a minute.
I think it is interesting to go into the history. That's why I wanted to start there. And especially because COVID just had such a massive shift in behavior as it relates to supplements. So obviously more people are consuming them. And then getting into gut health. So for those that don't know, Arrae, as a brand, the core focus really is on gut and digestive health supplements. And so that in that of itself as a subsegment of supplements has really boomed. So overall, the supplements category is worth $35 billion and gut health makes up nearly $3 billion of that. But over the last few years, I don't know if you feel this way. It feels like every social platform I turn to, somebody's telling me what I need to do to optimize my gut health. This term, even gut health, I mean, according to Google Trends and searches, gut health as a search term is up 132% since 2016. So we're all more interested in this space than ever. So I think it's going to be interesting to talk about how Arrae has positioned itself for success in this, you know, growing sector of supplements.
Yeah. And we'll get into it like when we get to my part, but I mean, it's all about routine. It's like, it's a routine based, you know, product, right? So it's like, in order to see any of these benefits of any of these supplements, any of these health and wellness like brands, you have to like actually
drive the regimen.
But like you have to actually utilize it, and you have to utilize it frequently. And it's really hard to convince the buyers to keep with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's everything. And we'll get in, like you said, to retention later. But I mean, brands like Ritual, it's like, why did they come up with the name Ritual? Because that's so fundamental to the space. So digestive health is booming. I think it's really interesting. According to new research by Mintel this year, nearly 3 in 5 US adults say they try to eat foods that encourage a healthy gut microbiome. So, you know, more and more people are thinking about their gut. They're thinking about how to optimize. So perfect storm for a brand like Arrae. But on the flip side, I do want to talk about some of the realities about consumer behavior, because sometimes I think it's really interesting working in the space, especially working with different wellness brands, is who consumers want to be and who they are sometimes are a little bit at odds. And so I think brands, you know, can take advantage of that dichotomy and try to lean into the realities of who people are, but who they want to be in a way that their product is going to position that consumer for success.
Yeah. I mean,
So we can dive into it. So like I said, most US consumers are thinking about their gut. They want a healthy gut. But on the other hand, 85% of American consumers admit that they give in to half of their cravings for indulgent foods. So we're real humans, right? Like we want to be aspirationally gut healthy and whatnot, but we're going to lean into indulgence. And so it's important for brands to know that. I also think in this kind of post-COVID landscape, it's important to understand just general market behavior. So according to Numerator in 2023, people were going out more than ever before. So traffic for limited service restaurants grew 5% year over year. Even, you'll love this one, my traveler friend, TSA checkpoint volume was up 13% year over year, which is crazy. People are moving and grooving. Live Nation had its biggest year yet for concerts. I'm sure Eras Tour, shout out to my girl, Taylor Allison Swift. I'm probably contributing to that. But, you know, the American consumer is out. They're traveling, they're indulging, they're living their best life. But on the same side, they're feeling strongly about digestive health. And so this is where I think Arrae is perfectly primed to meet the realities of these consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's really interesting, the statistics about like people going out, because it's like the end of the pandemic.
Yeah.
We were all stuck inside and we were like, but I actually loved being inside.
Yeah. Sometimes we all wish we could crawl back into our pandemic hole for just a second.
I was thriving with the amount of activities that I did at home.
Yeah.
I actually took a herbalism course.
See, all we need is one more pandemic.
I know, and I'll make some candles for us next year.
Yeah, you should. That's hilarious. Yeah, I think during the pandemic, the one thing I gotta say, TikTok just as a platform now plays like such a critical role in my life and just influencing me to try different consumer packaged goods and whatnot. But I remember pre-pandemic, I was like, I'm not downloading that dancing app for kids. And then it took probably 2 days in the pandemic. And then I'm like making the whipped coffee or doing all the things. And that was the beginning of the end for me.
I was on TikTok in the beginning and I was like doing the dances, right? Like we would have like our pandemic parties. Shout out to my besties, Jasmine and Emmett. But we would like practice the dances, right? And then I was finding myself scrolling so much that like it would tell me, girl, get off the internet.
You're done. Yeah.
And so like actually after 2 weeks of having it, I turned it off and I didn't get a new TikTok until e-commerce marketing.
Wow. I'm impressed.
Well,
probably saved yourself a lot of money just because the impulse purchases and now with TikTok Shop easier than ever before.
Oh, I know we need to get into Arrae, but I want to make this one point. I've been shopping a lot, my friends.
Yeah.
On the Amazon and on the TikTok Shop.
Yep.
Okay. I literally purchased things like last week. It was like I was influenced. I'm not going to go into all the things I was influenced on, but it was all skincare stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I made my first purchase on TikTok Shop.
Yeah, it's almost too easy.
And now I understand why it's so easy, like from that customer experience.
Yeah, totally. But it's perfect for brands like Arrae, just to loop back a bit, because like I think platforms like that make it a lot easier for people to share their personal experiences with different supplements and just vouch for the efficacy, which is everything in influencing people to convert.
Yeah, I think that's everything in influencing people to convert from like a wellness brand, but also like skincare. That's why like wellness and skincare take off on TikTok Shop.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like you have that social proof. People want to be influenced. People want to talk about it for good or bad.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think would be a good time to pivot back to kind of Arrae and their messaging. So going back to people, living their best life, being out and about. If you go on Arrae's homepage, one of the first messages they hit you with is, we want you to never have to pick between food you love and feeling your best, which I think resonates a lot with this audience based off of the data that I shared previously. But within the same beat, they also say we use science-backed ingredients holistically to solve your problems. They talk about, formulation by, naturopathic doctors, efficacy being in mind, and, just their thoughtfulness around the formula creation. So I think from a messaging perspective, they really are hitting the nail on the head. Like, you're allowed to be both people, the person that goes out and lives your best life and indulges, but also wants to focus on wellness and wants to make sure that you're putting the cleanest supplements into your body.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing about it though, too, right? Like looping back to like marketing and like neuromarketing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that it's really important to have the right messaging and positioning for this type of product, because when you're a supplement brand and you're in a space that's overly crowded, you need to be able to sell your product and people to believe that your product is going to work.
Yeah.
So you have to hammer that messaging and that positioning constantly at every single point of your customer's journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And staying focused. I think right now too, with a lot of health and wellness brands, and we even consult one through our agency Open Late, but there's a lot of different claims and a lot of different messages they could make. Your co-manufacturer might come to you and say, hey, with this formula, you could make 20 claims. But like really at the end of the day, your consumer's attention span is a really finite resource. So what is the one or two things you want them to always associate your brand with, and just focus on that? And I think with Arrae, something else from a messaging perspective that's really highlighted on their site is how quickly the product works, results within 1 hour. And so when I think about some of the other brands in the space of digestive supplements, they may not be making a claim like that. So if that's something unique and differentiated that Arrae can really build its stake on, then they should, because like you said, with the saturation of the supplement category and so forth, it's hard to drive differentiation.
Yeah. Well, I think this is also why brand strategy and brand positioning and that messaging is also really important, right? Because you had a really good point. Your co-packers, all these people are going to tell you, okay, I have all these ingredients and they're going to do all these things for you as you're coming out with that brand, right? Like health and wellness, whatever it is, right? A beverage even, right? But you need to hone in so deeply into like what that messaging is in order for you to be really successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think of even brands like Arrae. We know my dad's a massive consumer of Arrae.
Shout out to Arrae.
Shout out to Arrae. But we were having conversations around it because even I've been looking into some of my own supplementation, clinical research about colostrum. And, there's a ton of other benefits of colostrum, vitamin A, all these other things. But Arrae leads with immunity. Like on pack, almost like just as big as the logo, it says immune revival. And so like getting really clear with consumers around that one thing you're going to own and what that looks like is everything. And I think we'll talk about Arrae's packaging here in a moment, but I think they do a really good job of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get into packaging because I actually have questions about color theory for you.
Oh yeah, I love a good color theory question. One other thing I will say on messaging is looking across their socials and creative on their site. I do think from a language perspective, I think they're hitting the nail on the head. I think from a visual perspective, there may be some room for optimization around visual cues. So I pulled up their Instagram grid versus a few posts from Kourtney Kardashian's new supplement brand, Lemmy. So Lemmy also has a product that's focused on deep bloating. And you can see just in general, the brand aesthetic with Lemmy is going to be louder. It's a Kardashian. They're less naturally focused. But you kind of have to ask yourself as you're building a brand, if somebody looks at my website, if they look at my Instagram grid for 1 second, are they going to understand what my offering is? And I think when you look at the Lemmy page, it's really clear, okay, in supplement plus indulgence, okay, bloating, digestion. So I think from a visual cue perspective, there's probably some room for optimization because they do such a good job on the product packaging itself, but making sure that the outcome that consumers want from taking this product is really clear visually across everything else is really, really important.
Yeah, I do slightly disagree only
Hit me
because
with it.
I know I was like, can I ask you if I can disagree?
Yeah,
Because we're like partners for
disagree.
life.
Yeah.
Okay, I do absolutely agree with you. Like if you're tuning in and you can see on the screen, we have Arrae and we have Lemmy, like in the comparison. I think from a supplement perspective, yes, okay, like that overindulgence, that's what I like understand from Lemmy. But like to be honest with you, I don't actually look at Lemmy from an old overindulgence perspective. I look at Lemmy as more of like a lifestyle because of the association with like the Kardashians.
Yeah, which Lemmy is a little bit hard because, like, I
Yeah.
think like pulling the Kardashian component out of it is like nearly impossible, right?
Yeah.
But I do think it's just like the case study, and Lemmy also has like debloat is one of many SKUs,
Right.
So they also have creative visuals as it relates to Lemmy Purr, which is for vaginal health and so forth. But I do think just generally speaking,
Yeah.
they do a bit better job when it comes to the bloating and the digestive health on just
Yeah.
the visual cues to like get that across.
Yeah. For sure. Like, and I think just one other point though. So I think Arrae is like really built around like routine, right?
Yeah.
And like, and I'll talk about that in the subscription piece of it.
Yeah.
So what I get, but granted, like I'm also doing the deep dive into this. Okay.
Yeah.
So like I'm a little biased right now. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. But when I'm looking at the comparison of it, like what I'm getting from their social cues is like lifestyle, and I'm also getting routine. And when I'm looking at like the grid.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and especially like the ability to come in like these types of packets, right? You can like take it and you can go.
Yeah.
Granted, I will say I have bias because I've been deep diving.
But it's also like going back to the language and the messaging on site. It is about, making sure people can have the food they love and feel their best, and about, holistic ingredients and thoughtful formulation. So it seems like, to your point, that might be true around routine and lifestyle. But at the same time, that means if that is the case, there's a disconnect between the language and the visual cues.
Yeah.
So it's, whether it's, optimizing language around routine, that wouldn't be my recommendation because I think there's a lot of brands out there that do it. But I do think, from a creative execution, there's a bit of room for opportunity. But overall, I do feel like Arrae does a really good job on, at least from a data perspective, looking at the category trends and the state of the US consumer. They are meeting a need that's right in between who people are and who they want to be.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the packaging part because
Yes.
I want to ask you a question about color theory.
Yes. So Arrae is pretty overt with what the product is accomplishing on pack. So as you can see here, or maybe we'll pull back up on the screen, they have their brand name, and then in small typography in the bottom right corner, they have, constipation, bloat, etc. So they're really straightforward with consumers around what the product is accomplishing. And actually, I didn't realize this until recently. They were founded over 5 years ago. And at the time, this is when the supplements category was filled with, functional ingredient names. It's not the sleep supplement, it's melatonin or fish oil or L-theanine. And as a consumer, it was really confusing to shop that side of the store because you don't really know what's the outcome. So then we saw, this shift in everybody leading with the consumer need state. So, Ollie Vitamins was really one of the first to do this. They experienced tremendous growth, got bought out by Unilever in 2019, but their supplements just say sleep or goodbye stress, and so forth. But now even Lemmy Vitamins, going back to them, it's Lemmy Burn and things of that nature. So really what Arrae is doing is very similar, given at the time when they launched, it was pretty revolutionary within the supplement space. But I do want to discuss why their approach is a little bit different than Ollie and some of these other brands. So according to research from Ipsos, about a quarter of Americans are embarrassed about their digestive or gut issues. I do think this is starting to change a bit. I feel like people on TikTok are embracing hot girls have tummy problems and all of that. But in general, people are embarrassed about this. And it's clear that through the brand and execution on pack that the Arrae team understands this. So when you're looking at the packaging, you can see that the brand logo is really big. And in the bottom right corner, like I said, the typography of the need state's really small. And I think that's really intentional because when you're, launching a brand that's servicing digestive health issues, consumers may not want the big letters that say constipated sitting on their nightstand or, on their bathroom sink and so forth. So I think that's really interesting because it's obvious that the team understands just the consumer experience and the psychology around a product within this category.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And again, like it's going back to like routine too, like on the site, like you can have this bottle on your nightstand or on your counter and have visitors and like people aren't going to be like, are you constipated?
Yeah. They're not concerned with that. I mean, even Jess and I, at a point we're talking to a brand that's building a lube, like a personal lubricant, brand. And we were talking about this with them because theirs was also very overt, this is lube pretty much. And we were like, whoa, we need to take a step back because you have to think about the psychology around the, usage experience. Do people want that to be advertised, right? Or do they want to just know what it is when they're making a purchase, but then, be able to have it be a little bit more subtle. So I think Arrae does a really good job in executing that. I think the one call out with the packaging would really be this works really well in D2C. I know right now they have limited regional retail distribution. I actually bought that one at Erewhon when we were there spending way too much money on Hailey Bieber smoothies a few weeks ago. But in general, I think if you take a look at the retail shelf, I have a picture and snapshot here from Whole Foods. You can see that this type of packaging would struggle to stand out on shelf. So I think it's kind of that balance as they decide to scale the business. And if retail does become a priority, figuring out what the right pack execution is for those channels to make sure that they're not getting lost in the sauce of various different supplement brands, but also maintaining and staying true to the brand identity.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very heavy, again, like lifestyle type of brand. Like that's why it makes sense in like Erewhon, right? Like they if you look on their like Instagram, they have like the Erewhon end cap that like really displays what it is, like all that stuff. So it stands out, you know? But like Erewhon's a completely different type of store.
Yeah.
Like Lemmy stands out amongst all the things, as well as like I can't think of the full name of this brand, but it's called like Pure.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of like different supplements, right? And it's a basic like white bottle with like blue on it.
Yeah.
But like I know it from Eastern medicine types of doctors, right? But it stands out, is my point, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think, this pack execution is awesome for D2C. I think if they do scale into retail, there might be, some things to think about. But overall, I think their positioning is highly strategic. I think the insights make sense for what they're doing. And it seems like they really understand the consumer usage experience.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So I think I want to talk about like going into like on the D2C experience specifically. So I keep mentioning this. It's like a very routine type of product, right? And I think that with these types of routine types of products, like health and wellness subscriptions is so important.
Yeah.
And I think if you're trying to sell this online, going into the subscription space makes the most sense because you want to develop that routine for that customer. You want that customer to continuously purchase from you. And so a couple of stats that I actually looked up was health and wellness subscriptions, including supplements, skincare, and fitness products, have seen a 40% year-over-year growth in that subscription space.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know. But it makes sense though. Like think about it, because everything that you were telling me about like COVID and all these things, it's like you want that routine of being able to like purchase it, forget about it, and call it a day, right?
Yeah.
And it's like constantly coming to you.
Yeah.
We were talking about this offline, but like I don't go to the store really. I shop on e-commerce.
She really is the e-commerce girl. It's not a front for LinkedIn.
Yeah. And so, the biggest thing here is that retention has to be a big play into this, right? And it costs more to acquire a new customer by 5 times.
Yeah.
5 times more to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one.
Yeah.
And lastly, if people invest into retention and subscription, they can also see a 5% improvement to retention they can see a 5% improvement to their revenue by 25 plus.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I did not make sense in there. Too much Celsius.
Yeah, too much Celsius.
But on that note, we actually have a special guest.
Drum roll, please.
Drum roll. It's our Call a Friend segment. Oh, I'm off camera. He's not here yet.
Right. Well, why don't you talk about color theory?
Yeah.
Right? Didn't we have some questions there?
Okay, so let's actually go back until our special guest, who's not here. Let's go back to the color theory. Let's go back to the package before I get into retention and subscriptions, though, because I actually had a question that we were kind of speeding through. I'm interested to hear your opinion on the color choices of the product.
I actually thought, and I'm pulling up their site right now just so I have the full SKU set in front of me. I actually thought the color choices were really interesting. I think from a constipation perspective, when you shop the category, I mean, obviously pink is something associated with very Pepto-Bismol, even like gentle laxatives. You shop the retail shelf, and they're all that same pink color. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think some of these other supplements like bloat, and some of these other, they even have some sleep and mood products on here. I think those ones don't necessarily play into the same color theory as maybe the constipation one does. I think the bloat's obviously pretty generic. I think like looking at the pack, I always say like if you took a picture of it and blurred a pack, and could you guess what the flavor is or what the offering is? That's kind of the test to know if you're leaning into those category cues or codes that have already been set forth. So definitely think with the constipation. I think with the bloat, not as much. It's hard to think of even a mainstream like comparable competitor though that just focuses on bloating. Like the best I can think of is even like an Athletic Greens. But I think if you doing a green type product or like a Bloom, it might lead consumers to think the product is a different formulation than it really is. So that might not be the best move. I was surprised that they didn't do anything that was the that Tums like rich kind of like deeper blue color. I know they have some sleep products. And so they have some like lighter blue hues, but I even think that would be pretty interesting because I think when you're looking at the set between, it's, I don't know why, I don't know who decided that digestive supplements were going to be pink, purple, and blue, but they really, I mean, between like Miralax, Pepto-Bismol, Tums, like they're all that in that kind of shade range. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on color theory. I think with the constipation, it seems like they're leaning into it, but it seems like not across all the SKUs.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, but I think it's a differentiator.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a differentiator.
Yeah.
Okay, so because this is a live show, so our guest is actually here.
All right, here we go.
So the surprise is we have Nish, the co-founder of Arrae, who is here to answer my hot burning questions about retention and loyalty.
How's it going, guys?
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. This is awesome. I was actually listening to a little bit of what you were saying while I was backstage. This is so interesting, all the color theory stuff.
Well, my guy, we will share the notes afterwards.
A lot of thoughts. All good things.
Yeah, totally. So I'm super excited that you're here. I wanted to, because like we're gonna get into like retention and subscription. And I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. With this type of product, like this has to be a subscription play, right? Because it's a routine. You need to build that loyalty. You need to build that consistency for that user. So, but I would love to hear in like, what role does the subscription model play in your retention strategy? And, how are you thinking about customer loyalty?
For sure. So I think that, when we thought of like a subscription product, the most important thing was that a lot of companies come up with subscriptions just because it's a good business model. And the issue with that is that while it is a good business model, you really need to make sure that the product is actually meant to be integrated into the customer's routine in that way for a subscription to make sense. Because one of the things that we really noticed is you can work like relentlessly on optimizing your subscription and loyalty program, but a customer is not going to fall for all those tactics if they don't actually need your product every single day or need to use it in a routine manner. So I would just go back to really thinking from first principles there, because when we came up with products, we're like, okay, which products are genuinely required to be used very frequently at a high frequency rate, and we will make those products subscription products. Other products, we will not make them subscription products. So for example, a lot of our products that we are like, okay, when it comes to gut health and it comes to things like digestive, like bloating as an example, people suffer from this, quite frequently. So it makes sense for them to be a subscription product. However, if you look at something like our gut boost tincture, which is really for optimizing your kind of gut lining, that's something that's way more unique of a product for much more like a customer who really knows what exactly they're dealing with. And that product, we don't really necessarily really push the subscription because that is not how the customer uses it. And so we actually target the upsells and the rebuying email flow on that type of consumer in a completely different way than we would market, for example, the subscription customer. So it's actually very first principles thinking when it comes to subscriptions. So I would say that it matters a lot when you have a product that actually people want to take a lot. But if not, then let's not try to push a subscription on a consumer that doesn't need to use the product all the time.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know.
I think that's just like, that's the soundbite, folks. If there's anything from this show to take away. And I think obviously Jess and I know this very well because with Feastables, even in the chocolate space, we know that wasn't a routine oriented product. And so, subscription model didn't make sense. But I think to your point, Nish, what you're saying is just the importance of putting your customer first over cash. Customer over cash, because subscription is going to be, a really cash heavy business model to your point that seems really lucrative and makes sense, but you need to put your customer in their need states first and understand what actually makes sense for your business.
Yes, I think it's like the need states, the wants, but I also think that, you actually stole my third question from you because I was going to ask you, how does Arrae personalize the customer experience? But let's just riff off of this, because what you're basically doing is you're segmenting your customer based off of like what their needs are, right? Like it's and you're also segmenting your customer based off of like what education that they need to receive. And I think that that's like that's something that we hammer home about in the customer experience. Like you don't want to just be like, hey, okay, you need the subscription to a chocolate bar, or like, a different type of SKU that like makes no sense, right? Like you, just for the sake of revenue, you need to be really methodical and thoughtful about what your customer experience is to actually produce revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you this one question, Nish. Who powers your loyalty in your subscription program?
We love working with Recharge. They've been such a good partner to us. We actually moved over to them recently, and no, we're really excited about working with them. They've been really phenomenal with just like the overall, first of all, this team and the way we moved over to them and all the support and whatnot. But also, I think just when it comes to like a feature richness, the platform is very feature rich, and so you're just able to do a lot with the platform, and you're able to really customize the flow of which a subscriber kind of goes through. So I just really enjoy working with them on the platform, honestly.
Well, thanks for taking the words out of my mouth.
There you go.
I actually just had one other question because I was about to like walk into also the awareness stage of your product. And one of the things that we've been talking about is like that messaging and the importance of that education, right? And so like throughout the customer journey, your messaging is really prominent for building your brand as a lifestyle, as a routine, right? And one of my questions is like, what was your thought process around, you have like medical professionals, health coaches, a part of your consumer journey, but I'm interested to know on the customer experience side of that, do you also educate your agents to give, that like health coaching? Like, how are you thinking about like support in that aspect?
Yeah. So what's really crazy is that when a customer writes in a question asking like very personal medical questions, they're not willing to accept an answer that is not like medically related back. And this is the really crazy thing. So actually, it's not right for it's not right for anyone but the doctor to be telling you what is okay for you, especially unless we know about your medical history, et cetera, et cetera. And so the reality is that in many cases, we actually can't answer a very, very specific question about a consumer unless you're the doctor. And so what's really unfortunate is that the customer hates that. They really hate it. And so what we've been trying to do instead is really educate them as much as possible, especially on the customer experience side, about what we are allowed to tell them and as much information that is relevant to the question they're asking. So if they ask, hey guys, I have this problem and I take these medications, can I take your product? In that case, it's like, hey, I'm actually so sorry. It's actually dangerous for me to answer this question. Like, please refer to a doctor. However, if they're like, I've been suffering from, this problem, and I have trouble going to the bathroom, and like I also have a lot of trouble with sleep. Can you please help me? In that case, we actually try to educate them as much as possible with a lot of our like wellness and journal and routine checks that we use ourselves as founders, as employees, as a research, as the clinical studies we've done on our products, and actually feed them the information to help them like learn about, okay, how to use these products. Also, what are lifestyle things I could be doing that are causing me to have these problems in the first place. So our customer experience people, they sit with me and my wife, who's my co-founder Sif, and also our in-house medical team about 3 times a week to learn about the details of what we are building, so they have like medical experience of what to say in a very knowledgeable way, so that we can answer the customer's question to the best of their knowledge without really giving them medical advice per se.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that you've really doubled down on the entirety of your consumer journey, from everything from messaging to the experience that your customer's having in website and then post purchase. And I think there's a lot of health and wellness brands on the market that, are slaying in products, right? But not thinking about the entirety of the customer experience journey to really retain that customer.
Yeah.
And so again, it's a retention play.
For sure. And I also think what's really interesting, double back on what you were saying, Nish, is just also as wellness and supplement brands, you do kind of have this moral, ethical responsibility to sell your products that you believe in, that you feel is fulfilling a consumer need state, but also understand that people's health is a holistic journey for them. And you're only seeing one message to your CX team is only one part of that journey. So I think that's just the way that you guys think about, structuring your CX team and how they're messaging and engaging is really important, I think, for other wellness brands to hear, because there might be other brands out there that they are giving unsolicited advice, or they are, just pushing product at any cost. But I think leading with, that empathetic understanding that people's health is holistic and you're one part of the story and you can help them optimize how they use the products, but really leaning on the experts is really key. And I think other supplement brands should take a note out of Nish's book for sure.
Yeah. And
I really appreciate that, guys, because I think that one of the really interesting things is that supplements inherently are kind of binary products in the sense that they're either going to work or they're not going to work. And what's really crazy about them is that like there's going to be one consumer who could try your product and it could generally not work for them, but like every other product in your lineup could work for them. So like just being so honest about like, hey, this actually may not be the right product for you, because they could come back and buy another product that you launch later on. And so like maintaining trust is like the most important thing. And I think like, especially as all the supplement companies in North America are growing and growing and growing, if we all work towards just being honest to the consumer, then we're not going to deteriorate the space, because otherwise the consumer is not going to trust any of us going forward. Like maintaining trust is like very, very important, and being honest is like the most important value, at least for me and the company at Arrae, because we just want to make sure, if anything, the customer like trust that they could try something from us and understand that we acknowledge whether it works for them or we acknowledge that it does not work for them. And so that's kind of like the right thing to do,
Yeah. Nish, I'm curious, just like in the supplement community, like as you interact with other founders and operators of similar brands, is there a community? It seems like this would be such a space that, people, even if they are building competitive brands or just products within like the broader supplement category, should be able to lean on each other and hold each other to, certain standards, just as a health and wellness community. Just knowing that their consumers, there's a lot of things being told to them online and things that are being sold to them. So do you find yourself frequently, interacting with the broader community, or is that something that you think there's an opportunity for everyone to band together?
I think there's an opportunity for everyone to band together for sure. I also just think that this is really interesting because, when a space is unregulated, there's going to be bad actors in it. And so what I've seen is that this is a really large and it's a really unregulated space. And so as a result of this, there's a lot of companies that are doing amazing things for the client. And there's also a couple of companies that are just doing, really poor things for the consumer. And so I've seen both sides. I've seen the people who want to do good band together. The guys who know they're not really, wanting to do good for the consumer, like they're almost impossible to get a reach of. So you don't even know who's actually running those companies. And I'm talking about really, really large companies, just because like the interest of that is just misaligned with the consumer a little bit. But
yeah, that's fascinating.
Totally. Well, Nish, I appreciate you for coming on.
Yes, thank you, Nish.
Thank you.
Well, we love the product. I guess just quick shout out to anyone that's, watching at home. I gotta say, I feel like we try a lot of different supplement brands, and I will say, even going on your site and, works in just under an hour, I was like, "Are you sure?" But no, after trying the product, and this was actually before we even decided to do this episode, I bought this at Erewhon,
Oh,
and
you're so
saved
kind.
me on a lot of vacations this summer. So definitely recommend anyone in the chat to go and check out their site.
Yeah,
Thank you, thank you,
definitely.
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on, and keep tuning in. We're gonna break down your emails next.
All right. Okay. Have a good one, guys.
All
See you
right,
soon.
Nish.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you. Cool. That was really awesome. So doubling back, I want to go back to the awareness state because I actually want to talk about, I want to double back down to what you were talking about, like from a consumer insights perspective, right? And so like if we're looking at, I have on the screen here, I have the social channels, and then I also have like the homepage. And like what I really love about this customer journey, from everything from awareness to landing on site, is the messaging is always consistent throughout every single channel. And so like me as a consumer, if I land on Arrae on the social pages, I'm going to be educated about what it is, what this product is, and then I'm going to go and land on the website. And then what I love about the website is like, yes, there's like basic hero images, but there's like that messaging throughout. Instead of just like hammering home with like pictures or like regurgitating what's happening from like the Instagram channel back onto the website, it's actually educating the customer. So it's like continuing with like, of course, the messaging of, we want you to never have to pick between the food you love and feeling your best. But then if you continue scrolling down through the page, like there's other opportunities where it's giving those visual cues to the customer to like really hammer on that messaging. And so one of the statistics that I actually found was that visual content is processed 60,000 times faster in the brain than text is. And it activates the brain's visual and emotional centers, making the information more impactful and memorable. And I think throughout that customer journey on this website, it's like everything that you're talking about, from like the social channels and then going to the website, having those visual cues, I'm consuming that information very quickly. Right. And I think with this type of like complication of a product where we're talking about like supplements and lower, if I'm a consumer and like I'm just maybe landed here because I was socially influenced, I don't really know what it is that I need. I need you to tell me what it is that I need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even with the visual cues, just to piggyback on your stat, and I can't remember the number off the top of my head. Just finished a book. I highly recommend anyone in the chat to read it. It's called Decoded: The Science Behind Why We Buy. But they even talk about visual cues that have human beings in them, eliciting certain emotions, are far more likely to be retained and understood. I think if a consumer sees, even that visual you had pulled up, if it was just a box of pizza versus a consumer, really engaging and saying happy to engage with whatever indulgent food, that also makes a big impact.
Yeah. But I also think it's storytelling too.
Yeah.
Right. So that continuation of that awareness into landing on the website and being able to tell that story from like social, like you see all the lifestyle images and then you go to the website and then you get all these visual cues.
Yeah.
But the way it's situated on site, it is a story. And it's like you have to actually tell your consumer a story to get them to purchase. Right.
For sure.
And another like statistic that I was found that it's even like doubling back even further, but 92% of consumers want brands to make ads that feel like a story.
Yeah.
So whether we're talking about Arrae or we're talking about a Celsius or whatever the product is, right? When you're selling to a customer in your creative performance marketing, whatever it is, right? You need to be telling a story. You can't just slap some things on and say like, cool, this is us. Like you want to make them feel attached to it, that emotional like banding together.
Yeah, totally. And I'd even build on that, on the type of story that you're telling. I mean, it's kind of, and I think there's plenty of literature out there and books around just like Pixar storytelling and whatnot. But we actually had this realization when we were building our own website for the agency Open Late. But making sure that the way you're telling the story is positioning the consumer as the main character and as kind of the hero, quote unquote, of the story. So I think there's a lot of companies out there, especially in the agency space. We're an agency that does X, Y, and Z, but really we're a brand that sells X, Y, and Z. Like that's not how you want to tell the story. It needs to be you as a consumer should be able to eat what you want and feel okay.
Yeah.
And I think just like the positioning and the perspective of how you're telling that story is also everything, because one's going to resonate more than the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And so last point on the storytelling though, I wanted to actually go into the PDP pages because I so like social to like homepage to then PDP. What's really interesting about their PDPs page is so going back to what I was saying about you have to convince this buyer to buy it because like you're not going to a doctor's office and saying like you need this extract of this and this is going to help you this. Like, you know, you don't like you have to sell the herbalism essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so what I really loved on the PDP pages is that they actually put facts about the ingredients based off of the clinical trials that they've done on the PDP page. So instead of it just being like images of somebody utilizing the product or you taking it with a glass of water, they're putting percentages, they're putting data onto it. So 86% of participants felt less bloat and discomfort.
Yeah.
And then another one says 74% of participants reported less IBS symptoms and gassiness. I couldn't read the small print. Gassiness. So I love that because it's like they're utilizing social proof. They're utilizing a visual cue with a statistic.
Yeah. And I also think like to our conversation earlier, there's a lot of snake oil out there right now. There's a lot of people selling whatever they can to make a quick buck in this space, especially it being regulated based off what Nish said. So I do think this helps, to your point, the social proof and just the legitimacy and credibility of the brand that they are, launching clinical studies and they are ensuring that the efficacy is strong of these products.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other piece of this, right? So I'm on the PDP page and I'm like, all right, so I've decided what product I want to buy. I want to buy the D-bloat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm left with options of how many capsules do I need?
Yep.
And then I'm also given a cue that if I make this purchase, I will get a free sample of another product.
Yeah.
Which I love. And we'll get back to why I love sampling products.
Yeah.
And then on like the subscription piece, I can choose 3-month, 2-month, or 1 month, right? I chose a 3-month because I probably won't like utilize these pills as much, but some people might choose 60 days, 30 days, whatever it is, right? But what I like here, again, hammering home on the visual cues, is that it's easy to select your subscription. It's ease of use. I know what I'm getting, right?
Yeah. It's very clear.
It's very clear. And then lastly, going back to the purchase. So I made a purchase and I actually got a free sample with it. And it was L-glutamine.
Yeah, glutamine.
Glutamine.
Yeah.
Too much Celsius.
Yeah.
But L-glutamine. And I've never utilized it. I don't know what it's for. Like, but now I've gone down a rabbit hole and educating myself on like what it's for because I know that this is coming into it with my package, right?
Yeah.
And so what I really love about sampling, if we, I wrote about this actually this week in my newsletter, you get like your free birthday gift or you get this free welcome thing, right? And what's really awesome is like you're giving like these samples to your customer, it kind of triggers this like you gave me something, so I need to get back to you. And like it also triggers like an impulse purchase type of trigger in your brain, right?
Yeah.
So like now I'm like, all right, I'm getting the sample. And I'm so excited about the sample. What if the sample works or it doesn't work? I feel like I owe Arrae something. So I need to go make another purchase or stay with that subscription.
Yeah. Do you think that's true about all consumers, that behavior?
Okay, let's look at the Sephora Beauty Insider, right? Like, cause I like talked about this like this week. Like, I think that you get that free birthday gift or you get like that free welcome gift of like a discount or something.
Yeah.
If I'm going into the store and I'm going to make that purchase, like I feel like I need to go and make like a haul of my skincare.
Yeah.
But so I don't know if it's true for all consumers, but I can tell you that in some areas it is true.
Yeah. I definitely think more than anything else, I mean, like with the category that they operate in, like efficacy and it working for your body is the number one barrier to consistent conversion. And so I think the sampling just makes a lot of sense because if somebody can figure out in a small sample that it works, then the upsell to actually purchase the XL version is really, really easy.
Yeah. Well, so I actually pulled up a couple of stats on this because like just for talking about it from like a retention and like, purchasing perspective, right?
Yeah.
So from a repeat purchase rate, 58% of consumers are likely to make a purchase after receiving a free sample. So again, the Sephora Beauty Insider, whoever you get free something from, right? I think about like Safeway giving me like dollars off on my gas. So I'm going to keep purchasing from them to get like money off of my gas. I don't know. What's the Safeway equivalent? Jewel Osco.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, from a brand perception, 92% of consumers are more likely to purchase new products from a brand they trust, and sampling helps build that trust.
Yeah, for sure.
So in this aspect, right, of health and wellness and talking about supplements, like, I'm getting something for free and like I have a good brand perception. I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I definitely see whether or not consumers feel like they owe the brand something. I'm still not fully sold on that, but I do think the trust component is huge because I think right now, again, people feel oversold to, over-influenced. There's so much, products being pushed out there, but you're going to give me something for free with no expectation in return. I think that really is what it is as a consumer, and I think different consumers can respond differently to just like that dynamic.
Yeah. Either way, it's a dopamine release.
Yeah, for sure.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Because you're really excited. Like, I got some free shit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, going into like the life cycle flow, like, and going back to like why retention matters to health and wellness brands. So I think that we've talked about this numerous times, but supplement brands face heightened retention challenges because customers don't immediately see those results. Like, you have to really sit with it for a long period of time. And so just to wrap up the thought of like why subscriptions like do matter from a retention perspective, giving people options on utilizing these products, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, I'm pushing my consumer to want to be a part of the program and to see those results. That's the point.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think what's interesting here, and Arrae's a little bit different because they claim, works within 1 hour for immediate relief. But I do think supplement brands being very clear on how long somebody needs to be taking a product in order to see results is also everything to the consumer. If it's the norm for 3 months, I know like we work with a wellness brand where that is the norm. You have to take the product for 3 months. But the consumer doesn't know that and they give up after 2 weeks. I think that kind of education in terms of retention is really, really important.
Yeah. So actually I wanted to dive into like the emails that I got, right, from an education point of view. So like immediately after making my purchase, I got a regular standard like order confirmation page. No real like frills to it. I know what I'm getting. Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right. But then immediately after, I got a welcome email. And that welcome email is just kind of like re-emphasizing. It says like life is complicated, remedies shouldn't be, like really just re-emphasizing like this is really easy. You can like really you can continue doing this and stay in the flow, right? And then I got an order thank you. So then I got an order thank you, and it's just talking about like, okay, the product's going to be shipping, blah 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 blah. But it pushes me to their favorite articles in their journal page. And their journal page is filled with plenty of different blogs about the 7 reasons you want this and the 5 reasons you want this. So as a consumer, if this is my first time I'm ever purchasing from you, I have the opportunity to continue my education about your product on my own leisure, but I'm being reminded of these resources within the website. So I'm constantly going back while I'm anticipating that product.
Yeah.
And then lastly, it had been a couple of days, so I also hadn't used the original welcome flow from my my percentage off, right? And so the reminder welcome flow also pushed that education opportunity, even if I hadn't converted yet.
Yeah.
So it's like saying like, why do you choose Arrae? Like, here's the reasons why.
Yeah, I love that.
And then, just to hammer home a little bit further, but then like even in that process, I've gotten 2 different education emails, and some might say that it's like a little too much, but I actually think in the case of like these ingredients and hammering home clinical trials and like the reasons why you want to utilize this brand, it's not overkill because you want to educate your customer so they continuously come back, but also are educated when they're receiving that product. So then they can implement this into
I think
their
it depends on the
routine.
category that you're in. I know we did like flings, which is that Pop-Tart.
Yeah, I wouldn't want
version.
that.
Yeah, with that, it's like, okay, there's only so much, you put it in the toaster and you eat it. But I think like in the supplement space, yeah, you're right. I think education is everything.
Yeah. Well, one other thing that I found that, and I thought this was really interesting when I was just like kind of doing some research, and this is from HubSpot, which is like a blog site, but they actually say that companies that blog generate 55% more website visitors. And in this case, it's like you're really pushing that continuously go back. But what I'm interested in, like, let's just take the case of the flings, right? Like if they continuously had like blogs or whatever, like would they still get that same amount of traffic?
Yeah. And is that traffic, is that like attributed to just like SEO? and,
Yeah.
those pages being more prominent? Or is it
Yeah.
attributed to them actually, like, linking that out in other channels and driving traffic that way? That's what I'd be
Yeah.
curious on, like, the traffic sources.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure from HubSpot, I mean, granted, don't quote me on any of this because it's like, I don't know, but
Yeah.
like, because I thought the statistic was interesting, but I'm sure from that point of view, it's probably an SEO
Yeah.
rather than like from this use case,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know? So anyway, so the last thing that I wanted to say is, so as we're thinking about subscription, this being a very like routine based like product, right? And I'm not in this portion of the journey, but I think that for routine based products in that are in subscription,
Yeah.
you should be thinking about your cancellation prevention. And one some what I these are just like generic statistics that have nothing to do with Arrae, but when I got some statistics from Recharge, they've saved over 300,000 subscriptions by utilizing a cancellation prevention because they found wellness brands have seen success leveraging this prevention to educate customers on the consistency and the importance of maintaining it. And so like how and what it doesn't matter what program you're in, you should be thinking about like how to detract your customer from canceling is the point, right? Yeah. And so if I'm going through a cancellation and I'm in a routine based product, I should be one asking the reasons why so you can utilize data back into like figuring out how you can better your customer experience journey. But two, you should be also offering some sort of, hey, this is a routine, like you might need this education about it, or do you want to try this for an additional discount, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But one of the tactics that is really important in these types of brands is thinking about how to prevent your person from canceling is the point. Because in order to actually see results from these types of brands, you need to stay consistent.
Yeah.
And so as a part at the end of your journey, out of all the things,
Yeah.
thinking about retention, not just in a perspective of like upsells and win backs, but how do I prevent my people from actually canceling their subscriptions in a routine based product?
Yeah. And capturing insights along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing, the average retention rate for subscription services in health and wellness sector is 72% after the first 6 months,
Yeah.
which I actually find was really interesting only because we work across a lot of health and wellness brands and we see the cutoff around 90 days.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, 6 months does seem kind of long.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Any Wordle.
Well, this has been awesome. I think what Arrae's building is really interesting. I guess my question for you, Jess, if people zoned out for the last 5 minutes, what's like the one takeaway that you think somebody should leave this episode understanding? Whether it's about Arrae, supplements.
I think if you're in a general health and wellness space, because this is literally an oversaturated market in all of these things, you need to think about the history of supplements in all of the cases that you presented. And you need to think about your positioning and your messaging and how to continuously educate your customer throughout that customer experience journey so that they maintain that routine with your product constantly. And they're constantly thinking about you as the product that they should be loyal to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say to build on that for me, like the 1 to 2 takeaways would be one, focus in your messaging.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of people out there that are going to be doing a lot of similar things within the supplement space. What is that one or, 1 to 2 messages that you can own and have that bleed across everything that you do? And then in addition to that, kind of to Nish's point, just because there's, e-commerce playbooks out there that say X, Y, and Z about how you need to operate your business online, your subscription business across channels, things like that, doesn't mean that necessarily works for you in your category. So first principles thinking, get back to the root and understanding what you're trying to accomplish, what the consumer needs are, and then build your subscription and retention strategy around that versus following a one-size-fits-all playbook.
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. Personalize it. Please, for the love of God, personalize your customer experience.
Personalization.
All right. Well, that's it for this live. And we appreciate you all tuning in. If you want to get in touch, follow Laura or I on LinkedIn. You can also find us at openlakecollective.com.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Toodles.
Till next time.